For as little as 20 years ago, I think it's unlikely the world would have been so welcoming to the news that the Prime Minister of the day was to have a child with his latest girlfriend, having had 4 with his newly divorced wife, and by repute possibly a couple with other girlfriends. What's even more remarkable is that this is a Tory Prime Minister, and no one in the Tory party seems to care. It is a dramatic change from 20 or 30 years ago, when such events would have led to a grassroots rebellion in the party, particularly amongst the blue-rinsed women who played such a powerful part in the Shire Conservative associations. Remember, this was the party who forced Cecil Parkinson to resign as a cabinet minister because he'd had an illegitimate child with his new girlfriend. And it was also the party who didn't elect Michael Portillo, the strong favourite, as their leader because he revealed he'd had a homosexual relationship while a student. We all know moral attitudes have changed beyond recognition. But every so often something happens which just demonstrates the scale of that change.
So I agree with you, and I do think it reflects a change in attitudes and what is socially acceptable these days, and I support that because I think that, you know, this whole judgmental view of what constitutes a family and what constitutes this is okay, but you're not okay, for a very long time it's been very rigid. So I actually like the fact that kind of expectations have softened and lowered, and that anything is kind of fine to some degree, I guess. I haven't liked a lot of the personal scrutiny and comment and judgment in the press. Like, I think it was Alistair Campbell was tweeting "poor kid," and I just think all of that is a little bit much. And I don't know why so many people feel a need to pile in with personal judgment on someone else's private lives. That's made me feel uncomfortable. But yes, I agree with you, and I think that it's a good thing that things have changed.
It's interesting. There's a stat that said that in 2017, 48.1% of children born in this country were to parents who either weren't married or in a civil relationship. And that seems to me, a civil partnership, should I say.
But do you think the change in society is a good thing?
It is what it is. I mean, I can hardly sit and say it's a bad thing. I had 2 children out of wedlock for a long time. My children all seem to be having children out of wedlock. So who am I to criticise? And I don't. I think it's just something, a fundamental change that has happened. And it happens. And politics is always last to catch up with these things. But they've now caught up with this in terms of children being born out of wedlock.
Yeah. I was interested in the words you used, Michelle. You said expectations have softened. I think they've just become more realistic.
Do you?
I think that. I don't think it's softened. I think it is exactly as most people live their lives. And just to pick up what I thought, and I really support you on this. Look, Boris Johnson is, I can say, is old enough and ugly enough to look after himself. I think some of the opprobrium that's been directed to this woman's first child, right? And I think some of the coverage of her has been really ugly, negative, and also misogynistic.
I want to bring in a tweet from the Labour MP Florence Shalomi, who said, "Very convenient for this news to be announced today." Now, obviously, congratulations are to be extended to a couple expecting a baby, of course. But the timing is slightly galling, because I think that Boris Johnson is media managing us, and I find it annoying. So I'd like to remind you that on that day, you know, we had a top civil servant alleging that he was forced out, and he's now pursuing legal action. And we had all kinds of rumours about, you know, bullying and harassment culture in the treatment of the civil service. And we had reports of a potential hit list that the government had for permanent secretaries in the Home Office, the Foreign Office, and the Treasury. Now, what is annoying to me, I think, is that we are being media managed. You know, that Boris Johnson is playing the public for fools, and I just wonder how long we're going to put up with it.
But it didn't work, did it? I mean, because both stories became very big stories. And Boris's came and went, actually, to have the birth of the child. I'm like you, I congratulate them.
Yeah, well done to them. Yeah.
Congratulate the girl. She's in her early 30s. It's an exciting moment in her life. But I don't think... I think they probably did try to media manage. It didn't work. It didn't have that
the
impact.
media picked up on it. I mean, the media was, you know, they would have made Pravda proud, the way that they covered this baby.
Yeah, but they also picked up on Priti Patel.
Yeah, but as Robert Peston pointed out, it did mean that there was competition for the front page the following day, and the baby did win on a lot of
So you genuinely believe that was put out just because of that?
Well, the fact is, when did they find out that...
I don't know.
We've all known.
Well, I think all politicians try to manage the news agenda and always have done, but I don't think it worked.
Nick's about to spontaneously combust.
It's like we've never had media management. I mean, the Labour Party, in a way, probably took it to its absolute peak, and I put that word in quotes, the good day to bury bad news, if you recall that, back on 9/11. So all parties have been guilty with it, but Greg has got the...
Did I say they weren't?
No, but it was like... You
so
almost
is it possible to make the point without you going, what about?
Well, that's why I couldn't believe you could keep a straight face as you were saying it, because they've all done it. But Greg's point is the absolute the crowning glory. It didn't work. The story is out there. We'd better say, as we've mentioned the Home Secretary, by the way, that this is what the Minister of the Cabinet Office, effectively the DPM, Michael Gove, has said about this. The Home Secretary absolutely rejects these allegations. The Prime Minister has expressed his full confidence in her. And having worked closely with the Home Secretary over a number of years, I have the highest regard for her. This government always takes any complaints relating to the Ministerial Code seriously, and in line with the process set out in the Ministerial Code, the Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet Office to establish the facts. But again, Greg, I think that's a story it's going to run as well.
Well, you don't think that expressing confidence it's a bit like the football club board, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we express full confidence in the manager, and we're going to sack him next week.
Let's hear from what Sir Philip Rutnam said. He said, one of my duties as Permanent Secretary was to protect the health, safety and well-being of about 35,000 people. This created tension with the Home Secretary, and I have encouraged her to change her behaviours. I have received allegations that her conduct has included shouting and swearing, belittling people and making unreasonable and repeated demands, behaviour that created fear and that needed some bravery to call out.
Sometimes people need to be shouted at. Not to bullied, not to harassed. They need to be told, this isn't good enough. Go. I mean,
yes,
not shout, not at the top of your voice.
To do that, Nick.
Yeah,
you can
this
say,
isn't good enough. Do it again.
Yes, but you don't have to do it in that way. It doesn't work anymore. Behaving like that doesn't work in running organisations. It doesn't. Well, it works. You've worked for some pretty strange people, I think, over the years.
I find that really worrying.
Let's take it back.
To the extent that a top member of the civil service would actually resign because of it. That's the level of shouting and bullying.
Allegedly resigned, and of course he also had issues reportedly with Amber Rudd as well, and that was also the department that served up information so dud. Amber Rudd lost her job. Someone working to you consistently produces dud information. The work is substandard. What do you do?
Shouting will not solve anything.
Okay, what do you do?
Say change your behaviour, change your performance. Otherwise, there'll be consequences.
It's about processes.
It's exactly right. You go through the proper process.
You just say this isn't good enough.
Yes, but hang on, because their workplace isn't a single entity. So what works in one place to one collection of people would be ineffective in another. So I would argue that a fast-paced, high-pressured, breaking news environment, you're going to be communicating and communicated to differently to what you would be in, say, a tech startup in Shoreditch. It's going to be a very different style of management. And as a manager, your job is to communicate effectively to get the best out of your workforce. And if shouting achieves that in your sector and field and people respond to that constructively, well, that's up to you. If you're in a sector where it really is ineffective, then as a manager, you've got to be able to manage your style to that workforce.
First of all, I think that is absolutely wrong. I think that
what's wrong?
I think that you should. There is no place for shouting in any workplace. But even on its own terms, Michelle, that's incorrect, because as it turns out, the civil service does not respond well to bullying and being shouted at.
What's wrong?
We have union leaders say that the atmosphere in the civil service is unpleasant. It's putting people off. Well, no. So what you said that was wrong, which is that even on its own terms, you're saying there's some environments in which that works.
There is.
It doesn't work for the civil service, as we found out.
But isn't it, Michelle, isn't it simple that people perform better when they're valued than when they're afraid.
Yes, but
and
what
it's
I'm
not even very
saying-
complicated.
How does a Michelin
Absolutely
kitchen?
agree
How
with
does
you,
a
Greg.
Michelin kitchen ever work unless
There
the
are
chef?
some environments,
Yeah.
you might not like it, but
Yeah.
there are some environments where it is very robust.
The
in its
cabinet should not be
communication
Gordon
style.
Ramsay's kitchen.
No, no one
We
said it was. No
are
one
going
said it
to have to
was.
leave that one there. You'll be pleased to hear.